Tisztelettel köszöntök minden kedves résztvevőt. A Magyar Tudományos Akadémia Magyar Tudomány ünnepe rendezvény sorozatának következő programján. A Szegedi Akadémiai Bizottság Neveléstudományi Pszichológiai Szakbizottság Szociális Képesség munkacsoport korszakokon átívelő jogi intézmények című nemzetközi konferenciáján. Első előadónk.
Jo. Dakle, srdačno vas sve pozdravljamo na ovoj konferenciji. Kako ste u samom najavi vidjeli, radi se o prazniku mađarske znanosti. Ovaj mjesec, u studenome svake godine, na nivou cijele države u Mađarskoj se održavaju svečanosti znanosti. To znači da u svakom segmentu znanosti, Akademija organizira konferencije, simpozije i mi smo u okviru ovoga našega razreda, čega je predsjednica, kao što vidite ovdje, vlast koja stoji ispred mene. Zrinka, vi se nje sjećate, jel da još? Vi znate šta znači to kad ja kažem da je vlast? Ok. Dakle,
nadam se da ponovit će se da vidim ponovo vlast.
Ok. Zašto smo se skupili? Skupili smo se zato jer se svake godine u studenome održavaju takve konferencije. Mi smo u ovom našem odjelu, to je odjel za pedagogiju i psihologiju, a uglavnom smo pravnici svi mahom, osim Gorana koji je jedini pravi iz ove struke, na koje se referiramo. Međutim, mislili smo da bude skoro sam rekao konfesionalni, da uzmemo najširi mogući opseg i onda smo se odlučili da pozovemo i goste iz Hrvatske i imamo predstavnike iz Srbije. Iz Bosne su nam nažalost otkazali, a mi kao domaćini smo tu iz Mađarske. Kolega će nam se javiti, koji je inače Slovak, ali predaju u Budimpešti, i jako smo zadovoljni što je kolegica prihvatila da nam prezentira jednu poljsku temu. Samim time, ja bih smatrao da konferencija može početi i kolegica, supruga, neću reći kolegica, supruga je rekla da sa Igorom počinjemo i sa njegovim radom, jer je on prvi u tom segmentu, jer počinje još tamo u 13. stoljeća. Hvala lijepo i svima želim uspješan rad.
I would like to thank you for inviting me here today. It's a big honor to me to participate. I have to apologize at the very beginning because I have classes the whole day today, so I have break at the moment, so I'm apologizing to those who present after me because I won't be able to listen to them because I have to go back to call the rest of my lectures. I have the whole day, so sorry about that. It really was, it's not intentional. Anyways, I also have to emphasize that I'm not a legal historian. I am actually a criminal lawyer. I deal with topics regarding substantive criminal law and a little bit of international criminal law, and therefore I am not so much into legal history. I emphasize that because I see many famous names here, especially from Croatia, which I know of, that are the names regarding legal history. So I apologize to them also if I don't represent Croatian science in a good light. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to study my PhD in Zagreb, where I had the opportunity to be taught by a famous and unfortunately late professor academic Davor Krapac. And Professor Krapac put a lot of emphasis on historical topics. Therefore, we did have a lot of legal history regarding criminal law, the history of criminal law, and especially the history of criminal proceedings. And the topic I'm presenting today, and that is the criminal proceedings of Zagreb Gradec according to Golden Bull from 1242 and the amendment 1266, is the topic I was presenting to him during my studies some 12 years ago now, and there is also a paper on that topic which I have published in Journal of Faculty of Law Osijek, Pravni Vjesnik. It's a good journal. It is now, thanks to the Professor Ivana Tucak, who I also see here in audience, it is now indexed in Web of Science core collection. So it is good to publish there. Anyway, I will try to be as brief as possible and maybe leave some room for questions and answers. But basically, if you want to know more about my topic, you can read this article of mine. It was published in 2009 in #1 of Pravni Vjesnik, law review of the Faculty of Law Osijek, and there you can find this topic discussed more in details. So that's for that, and I will give you just key findings of my research back then. So anyways, as you all know, you all know the historical meaning of Golden Bull of Bela IV of Hungarian Emperor, who gave this bull as a sign of gratitude to the city of Zagreb. And it is important to us in criminal law because it establishes some sort of codification of substantive and procedural law regarding criminal law, of course. And it is important because in those days, as you know better than I do, we don't have so many documents from these ages. So this Golden Bull is important because it represents typical example of criminal proceedings in those days. So therefore, Professor Krapac and then of course me find it very important to study and to publish something about it. In Golden Bull, you will find both substantive and procedural norms, but while substantive norms are strictly connected with what today we call substantive criminal law, and we usually find it in criminal code, procedure is unique for all types of procedures. So there are no specific rules for criminal proceedings and then for civil proceedings. Let's say you have one proceeding, and that one proceeding is for all kind of proceedings, therefore also for criminal proceedings. Now, I will just go briefly through those provisions, and then I will give my conclusions, and then later we can maybe leave some room for discussion, as I said. So there is, it is arguable, were there 2 or 3 instance court in Zagreb those days. Some authors claims that there were 3 instances, which would be similar as in Croatian law today. Some other authors, for example, academic Medvedović, claim that there was only 2 instances. I did not took a stand on that issue because there is not enough documentation to conclude about that. I can only say that there were at least 2 instances, which is important because that means that even back then there was a right to file an appeal, which is one of the basic ground rules even today. So we can see starts of this tradition back then. To become a judge in those days, you should be a candidate of people with high reputation, and you shouldn't be convicted for, how would I say, krivokletstvo, for and I cannot remember English expression for that.
Perjury.
How?
Perjury.
Perjury, yeah, I know. I knew that it is something with P. Thank you, Goran. Goran, who is not a lawyer, knows law better than I do, at least in English. So anyway, the equality of arms was a principle that was accepted even then in Golden Bull, although not totally, but in some to some point there was equality of arms, which is one of the basic principles in criminal proceedings today, and you will find this principle in many decisions of European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Of course, I could talk only about that, but that is not my topic today. What is interesting is evidence procedure. The Bull new oath zakletva, oath, as the basic and most important evidence or evidential mean, and the most frequently used as documents evidence about that. Besides the oath, people also recognized the duel, but not regular duel between two persons, but instead so-called courts, duel before court. So those were two most important evidence means used in criminal proceedings those days. And also the behavior of the defendant during the proceedings, his or hers admitting the crime, etc., was something which was also valued high. Torture, as you all know what torture is, was of course present in those days. However, provisions of Golden Bull do not mention specifically torture, which is not unusual for generally for regulations in those ages. Witnesses was probably the most important evidence according to the Golden Bull, and it was even more important than the oath, which criminal lawyers interpret as the prevalence of the principle of finding and establishing material truth before just satisfying the form of the proceedings. However, some documents say that in jurisprudence, in practice, the oath actually was the main evidence in practice, of course. So from my research and from studying all those documents in those days, I was able to conclude that in Zagreb in 13th century, while Bull was in force, if we compare that kind of criminal proceedings with this usual division of proceedings on accusatory and inquisitory and mix, of course, nowadays the prevalent form is mixed proceedings, with maybe a little bit of inquisitory elements in earlier stages of proceeding and then more of accusatory elements on the actual trial. I can conclude that I was able to conclude that in Zagreb in 13th century there were more of accusatory elements of criminal proceedings than inquisitory. How? Well, first of all, the initiative for starting the proceedings was exclusively on the accusation, on the person who asked something from the court. So there was no some sort of state body which was in charge of starting the proceedings, but instead it was all based on private initiative, which is typical for accusatory proceedings. Then the defendant was what we say in criminal law active. He had the role of subject, not pure object of the proceedings, which means that he had some sort of procedural rights and procedural authorities. He was able to do some actions during proceedings. You know that in typical inquisitory proceeding, the defendant has the role of an object, not a subject of proceedings. Generally speaking, two parties were equal before court, and the court was there just to rule, not to run the proceedings, but to rule, which is also typical for typical accusatory element of proceedings. Also, parties were in charge of deciding what will be discussed in front of the court. They were the ones who actually set the limits of discussion, which is also typical for accusatory proceedings. And the trial was oral, it was contradictory, and it was public, which is also those are the typical elements of accusatory proceedings, not just back then, but only nowadays. To conclude, I can say that Golden Bull was quite important for the later development of criminal proceedings in Croatia, that it certainly set some standards. I would say that those standards were quite high for those days. And some of those rules, some of those standards kept even today. So I can say that this is very important historical document if we talk in terms of criminal law and especially of criminal proceedings. So anyway, since we have many more presentations today, and since I have my classes in 15 minutes from now, I will conclude by saying that thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask me. So thank you very much.